we have another really exciting panel ahead of us. This one's called Cashing In, How Digitization is Transforming Economies. So digital technology is transforming the global economy. This change is enabling fundamental innovation and disruption, but are we ready for it? Please join me in welcoming João Tomé of Dinero Vivo, who will be talking to our panel, which includes Michael Schlein, President and CEO of Acion, and Wim Mesh, President of the European Banking Federation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Here we are. We are with less one guest. I think he was caught in the storm that was outside. So in this panel, this is the Cashing In, How Digitization is Transforming Economies panel. And with us, we have, like we already know, Wim Mijs, President of the European Banking Federation. The federation is a voice of the European banking sector, uniting 32 national banking associations, so that's a lot. And also we have Michael Schlein, President and CEO of Action, a global non-profit committed to creating a financially inclusive world. So we have good guests and we're waiting for Ismail. So let's start with the finance society. Is finance a society inclusive subject, Wim? More and more people have access to financial services. Can we involve everyone in a cashless world, really?
I think that, well, and actually Michael should answer that question, because I think that mobile technology gives us a unique opportunity, an incredible opportunity to get people, not only the people who traditionally have access to finance and a bank account, but also go a lot broader and bring it to people that have not had access to finance in developing countries, but also to illiterate countries. And there are great examples of just that.
Because tech and internet nowadays are a big point in terms of the cashless society, but 50% of the planet doesn't have internet. So how can we involve everyone with this reality?
For me, absolutely, mobile technology is the key. And if you talk about banking, it's transforming banking, because who goes to a branch and stands in line for a cashier? For me, one of my most retweeted tweets ever was, if it's not on my phone, I don't need it. And I still believe that. And this technology is transforming the whole banking system, and certainly also in Europe.
Okay, thank you. Yes? Of course, join in.
So all of us here can take for granted that you have access to easy, convenient digital payments, convenient places to save, insurance, credit if you need it. The global financial system works pretty well, but for 3 billion people, the global financial system fails them completely. They are invisible to it. It is invisible to them. So yes, we have the potential to create a financially inclusive world, but we have a long way to go to get there. We're living now in the world of digital revolution, and it used to be that distances were seen to be insurmountable among the base of the pyramid, and today there's no distance that's insurmountable. It used to be that transaction sizes were too small to be commercially viable, and now there's no transaction size that's too small to be commercially viable. It used to be that it was impossible to know your customer at the base of the pyramid, but now with data and data analytics, we can know our customers in completely new ways. So there's a lot of excitement around fintech and the potential, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, of course. And it always evolves technology, the way technology can involve more and more people in this today's world. Going back to that, we know that digital economy and financial services are all about trust also. Trust is a big issue for people. We know also that some people in some countries have more trust in fintech in this area than others. Even in Europe, really, Scandinavia is a more acceptance of it. What do you think about, could the clients really trust fintech? Is that the key? And what can
I think
we
that's
do
one-
to trust
That's
it?
one of the great challenges. Of those 3 billion people, 80% of them have cell phones, so increasingly they're exposed to technology, but it's a big thing to go from living in a cash world to beginning to transact digitally. This is a very sophisticated audience. If I told you your compensation was now going to be paid in Bitcoin, you'd have some questions. You'd say, how much is this going to cost me? Where can I transact with it? How do I work with it? That's the same thing. If I tell you, if you're living in a cash world and all of a sudden I'm trying to introduce digital currencies to you, you'd have all the same questions. So trust is critical in every aspect of financial services, but especially when you're talking about the most vulnerable people in society, the 3 billion people living at or near poverty.
In terms of the European Federation of Banking, you work also a lot on education. There's 3 million employees in terms of the banking system, really, in Europe. How can you work with them in the education in terms of giving them tools to work in this new digitization era?
Well, it takes more than 16 minutes to answer that question, but what is important is, indeed, trust is the key. And you're moving to new technologies and you see a generational difference. It's quickly adapted by young, but older people needs to get to be helped over a certain threshold. And that's indeed why the banking system, why employees are trained to help people. On one hand, the brand needs to be trusted. That's one essentially important thing, and customers usually, even if they are critical about banks, they trust their bank. That's one. And secondly, we need to realize that it is not an age of pushing technology. We should not go out and push it to customers. We need to realize that indeed, as Michael said, that people who have lived with coins for all their lives need to be helped to go to a digital world. And that digital world needs to be secure. So we have big programs in all countries that we are present, in all 32 countries. And we bring these projects together and we learn from each other's best practices.
In terms of that area, do you see the workers joining in the education efforts? Is it easy for them or no?
No, they love it. It's actually a number of people are very much trained to go into classrooms, work with teachers, listen to teachers, because in this learning experience we need to realize that bankers do not have the key. Bankers are in the back seat. You need to listen to the professionals. You need to listen to the educational professionals, to the teachers, and so we create platforms in which we develop educational tools. Yesterday in Brussels, we had the International Federation of Finance Museums who develop interactive tools for learning. And we listen to them and we work with them. And that's the way to do it.
Perfect. In terms of your area, such a global area really, do you think there's also privacy concerns in terms of the fintech, the digitization of economy, and what are those concerns? Are they comparable to Google, to Facebook concerns that are nowadays?
Absolutely. The whole world is concerned with privacy and data, but really the debate around privacy often is a debate around trust. And when you're trying to gain the trust of, again, the most vulnerable people in the world, I think just getting things to work in an environment that may have intermittent electricity or intermittent internet access is a whole different set of trust challenges. But trust is critical to any financial service, especially when you're introducing new technologies to people who have never used them before.
And you see the new technologies implementation like artificial intelligence, blockchain, in the worries of people. This is so new. Some people don't know what it means.
The most exciting thing, or one of the most exciting things, is the explosion of data. And again, for a very informal part of the world, it's hard to know your customer and it's hard to know what he or she may need, but data from cell phones, smartphones, they're new sources of data. We're seeing global satellite imagery, for example. In the last few years, the quality has gone up and the cost has plummeted. And we've seen companies that are now using satellite imagery to assess the needs of smallholder farmers. So from satellite images, they can say what type of seed do you need, how much seed do you need, what type of fertilizer, how much fertilizer, and they can estimate your ability to repay a loan, and then they can send that package of inputs to the farmer, and then the farmer repays at the time of the harvest. That's a whole new source of data. Yeah. Now, why is that exciting? Much of global poverty ties to single-family, one-acre farms, and in the past, they've been impossible to reach. So technology is transforming, and new sources of data are transforming the way we can meet the needs of the poor.
Exactly, and to continue on that, in India, there are ways to help illiterate people by using mobile phones and make photographs of crop, and the software automatically values the crop and then takes that money and puts it in a bank. And these are steps forward together with data analysis that are indeed helping the world indeed.
Of course. Do you have more examples in terms of European banking system going this way in terms of digitization?
Well, developed countries have different sets of questions. In the developed countries, the problem that you see is the virtualization of money sometimes leads to over-indebtedness, because you don't realize if you have a stack of coins in your pocket, when they're gone, they're gone. If you have a mobile phone and you walk around paying everything on a festival like this, then suddenly you notice that you've spent more money. So yesterday I was demonstrated, there was an app that demonstrates that it takes your monthly income and creates a visual pile of dollars, or whatever, euros or dollars. And then when you buy something, you visually see it burn on your phone. And I thought that was a great way, again, to use technology to make sure that you know that you're spending.
Hello, Ismail, and welcome. Was it the storm that got you? Welcome.
He's been here the whole time.
Oh, we didn't. Ismail, World Remit founder and executive chairman, the leading digital money transfer company that's pioneering a mobile approach to sending money around the world. You had a slogan. I love this slogan: sending money abroad as easy as instant messaging. It's a good slogan. So let's start with you in terms of this digitization impacting on local economies. We talk a bit about it. What is your experience in this matter?
I think what we're seeing is significant digitization, particularly in developing countries, driven by the phenomenal success of mobile money. At the end of last year, we had 690 million mobile money accounts. And what that is driving is the digitization of a lot of, and the move towards cashless economies in many parts of the world, where countries are now revising their GDP upwards because of digitization. And in terms of the benefits individual households gain is that in case of remittances, we're seeing people receiving their money without leaving their villages. And often we're seeing women receiving money on mobile phone rather than many men going to cash locations in busy cities. And I think what digitization has done is that it has helped revive the traditional wealth sharing mechanisms, which was prevalent in many developing country communities. And when some of the family members of those communities go abroad, distance used to make it difficult for people to share money. Now, with instant communications, people can share money. They are more aware of what is happening, not only within their household, but also across their village. So distance no longer doesn't matter in terms of how people share money. And the apps, WhatsApp, mobile money means somebody can share small amounts of money, $4, $5 at a time. So that's what we're really seeing.
So, just to add to that, McKinsey did a study funded by the Gates Foundation maybe a year ago that said that if you could create a digitally financial inclusive world, it would be worth $4 trillion to the economy, and on average in the developing world, it would be worth 6% of GDP in a developing market, which means if that's average, some of them are going to be significantly more. So the size of the prize here is enormous. Now that said, Also, Gates funded the Global Findex that the World Bank produced, and it basically said we still have a long way to go. 1.7 billion people still lack any access to any account, and we estimate something like twice that are poorly served by the global financial system. So we estimate it's about 3 billion people who are excluded from or poorly served by the global financial system. So we have a long way to go. And I guess I would say to this audience, if you can use your talents for good and bring fintech innovation to markets that need it, you can not only have an enormous social impact, but also a great financial return.
In terms of this digitization impacting on local economies, you have a good experience, you have good examples where you see it grow, where you see it flourish?
Axion is a global nonprofit dedicated to creating a financially inclusive world. We've really become a venture capital investor in fintech for inclusion. That's a lot of our work, and we find some of the most innovative companies all around the world using technology to meet the financial needs of the poor. Over our history, we've worked with more than 100 companies, financial services providers in 50 countries that are today serving tens of millions of people. The innovation that's going on out there is tremendous, and just like in the rest of the world, the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine technology, data analytics, smartphones, the Internet are transforming every aspect of it, but they have particular relevance in trying to solve the problem of financial exclusion, and we're seeing great innovation. I could share a couple of examples, if you'd like.
If you want, yeah.
A great company in Mexico is called Confio, which Confio is using 5,000 different sources of data to estimate the needs of small mom-and-pop shops to understand if, just like an individual, if a small mom-and-pop shop lives in a cash world, they are invisible to the banking system, and the banks have never been able to lend to them. But if you can digitize all their transactions, all of a sudden they become visible, and all of a sudden they become creditworthy. And so now Confio is doing incredibly well lending to small businesses because all of a sudden they can see. A similar company is called Lydia in Nigeria, which is also digitizing small businesses, and therefore they become visible. We just announced last week a partnership with MasterCard. Over the next 4 years, we're going to work with 10 million small mom-and-pop shops and individuals to help them make that journey towards digitalization to make them financially inclusive.
Good examples, thank you. You want to join in?
Yeah, I think what is really interesting, particularly digitization in the developing countries, that those digitizations are not the card schemes we talk here, which I call is a relic of the past. Those digitizations were when somebody transfers you money, or when you're a small business and you receive a payment from a mobile phone, it is like cash. You don't have to wait. You don't have to have the kind of a dispute is involved with card schemes. And that's why those digitizations have been hugely successful. And I think digitization is also helping us fight with financial crime. And this is the reason why Nigerian government is encouraging, pushing the move towards a cashless, because digital transactions have an audit trail, which means if a transaction becomes suspicious, there is something that law enforcement agencies can look into. And so those are really the key drivers of digitization in some of those economic groups. And I think related to that, of course, is the issue of digital identity. So digitization is also helping individuals who were excluded in the past to create a digital identity. I mean, look at the phenomenal success of Aadhaar in India, where 1 billion people who were historically unbanked have now a digital identity that can be accepted by government agencies, by financial services, and that is what we're seeing also in Africa. Digital identity is linked to your mobile phone, and sometimes with a biometric, which help people to participate in financial services.
Once people see that digitization or fintech is so easy to use, they don't want money, really. it's a bit like this. Millennials are a big part of it, but not all millennials. In terms of the banks, let's go to the banks also. Clients, can customers change the way a bank works in this area? Customers can push the banks to innovate, to give them the better solutions, right?
They do. They already do. And interesting when we're talking is that what we are trying to replace is the local bank with the banker from the community who has been there for 20 years and who would know all the families and would give credit also based on, of course, risk data, but also on his personal knowledge. And the combination of technology and data analysis gives us the possibility to rebuild this local branch at a much bigger scale. But it's already happening because indeed in many countries you see cash literally disappear. The countries in Scandinavia, very clear example. But last week, for instance, in the Netherlands, the central bank of all people was nervous and came out with a press release saying that they were nervous that the country was becoming too cashless. And I was, of course, completely taken aback by this, because this is where you want to go. You can't. There's so much opportunity there. So, in your answer, direct answer of your question, can banks be changed by their customers? This is exactly happening. I have no doubt that in 5 years we will see a completely different banking landscape, and it will be a different mix. But the online platforms will be essential in that.
I do think, on your question, I do think that people's expectations are helping to transform the banking system, especially at the base of the pyramid. So a typical woman living in poverty may have to spend hours. She has to leave the farm in order to make a small payment. Well, when she has a cell phone in her pocket, she starts to say, why do I have to spend hours and wait online? Can't I do that digitally? And so that leads to change. I mean, if you think of the change in banking, it's really going from being remote in branches and slow and manual to over the phone, instant and automatic, and our expectations are driving that.
Exactly. The consumer experience now is instant. So you want your payments to happen instant. Yeah. But another example is if you buy something now, you get it delivered tomorrow. In a traditional bank, if you would ask for a mortgage, you would do the mortgage meeting, and 2 weeks later you would get an answer from your bank. Nobody accepts that anymore. So banks are being forced to give an instant answer on the credibility. So they need to work harder. And again, data and technology can help them and should help them to deliver a better customer experience. That's it.
It's also empowering in a different way. Just like you control your image on Facebook, why can't you control your image in a credit bureau? Right? Credit bureaus are black boxes. We're seeing very interesting companies say, no, you can be empowered. You can put your best foot forward. You can shape your resume, and you can include utility payments and school payments and things that make you look good and improve your score. And so expectations are changing, and it can be enormously empowering.
So thank you so much. That's all the time we have. Thank you, everyone. I hope it was enlightenment. If we had 1-2 more hours, we can be here all day, of course. It's a big area. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the event. And welcome to Portugal. Hope you like it.
Thank you.